Good evening. Welcome to the January 27th, 2022 meeting of the Goffstown Planning Board. Sorry we're starting a little late. We're waiting for everyone to be in attendance. So we'll begin our introductions with Joanne.
Joanne Duffy, Planning and Economic Development Director.
Collis Adams, Select Board Representative.
Philip Devanza.
Gayla Bruck, alternate and recording secretary.
Tim Redmond.
Kimberly Peace.
Jim Raymond, and I'm the one that everybody's waiting for because I was late. I'm sorry.
David Pierce, I'm an alternate member.
Thank you. We have two regular members that are not here this evening, so David and Gail will both be voting this evening. First item on the agenda is the minutes from our January 13th, 2022 meeting. Do you have any motions or corrections?
I move we approve.
A second.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Kimberly to approve as presented. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? One. Still is abstaining. Motion passes. Joanne, could you tell us about the second action item, please, which is map 33, lots 17 and 18?
Yes, so originally they had asked for a continuation until the February 10th meeting, but I just got off the phone with Joe Boschman about an hour ago, and he would like to withdraw the application for now.
So the request is to withdraw and not continue.
Correct.
All right. I'm gonna make a note. Now, Joanne, does that entitle the applicant to anything from the prior application, or would he have to start from scratch, including notifications and everything in the future?
Yes, he would have to start over again.
Okay. So, does anyone have any discussion on the request to withdraw the application? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion.
I make a motion we approve the withdrawal, agree to,
Request.
accept, thank you, the request to withdraw the application.
Yes,
Sec-
I'll second.
Any discussion on the motion to accept the request to withdraw the application? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Okay. Excuse me, the only other item of business tonight is a new business item. Map 2, lots 6, 5, 64-29, and 59. Joanne, please.
Yes, so you probably remember, I think it was about a year or so ago, maybe a year and a half ago, Eversource had come in to replace and also add some additional poles along the what's the name of this line? K105 line, which runs from Shirley Hill to Wallace Road through Addison area, as well as Goldfinch, Tanninger, and out towards the Bedford Town line. They were approved and the work was completed, and now they are back tonight to ask for another request for some different poles. They're doing some new poles and some replacements. So basically, the reason they're here in front of you, in front of this board, is because there are some wetland impacts based, not so much where the poles are going, but based on the matting that needs to put down in order to access the poles. And so they've been to the Conservation Commission. They went there last night, and in front of you are comments from the commission regarding some vernal pools that are out there, but they didn't have too much to say. And the staff report lists for each sheet which poles are being replaced and what the impacts are. And then I also had a question, but I think it was pretty much decided last night that it wasn't an issue, was that the wetland, I'll ask this question of Collis, the wetland scientist is not certified at the moment,
I have a comment.
and our regulations state that the fiscal impact needs to be determined, not fiscal impact, the assessment of the wetlands needs to be signed off by a certified. So that was my only question.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, before we get going, in the spirit of full disclosure, I want people to know that I have a relationship through a nonprofit organization with the agent who's representing the applicant. However, that being said, I don't think that's going to affect my ability to review this application and act upon it appropriately.
everyone concur with Collis' statements, or does somebody have a problem with that? Seeing no problems, stay right up where you are, Collis. Thank you.
So the reason they need to go before this board is for a conditional use permit for these wetland impacts, for the use that they are providing to the town, which is the electricity. So
Okay.
they're here tonight to present and you also, in your package, should have the wetland report that was submitted as part of the file.
So before we go any further, I'm going to ask the applicants, were they at the Conservation Commission last night? So they have copies of the comments we have about changes in the wording and
If
such?
they don't, there's one right here.
Make sure they at least get the copy of
Did
it.
Patty send you guys a copy today? Okay.
The second thing is, will there be any need for Eric to stay around for this application? Eric, do you feel the need to stay for this application for any reason?
There are 4 minor, very minor comments, but there are other things I think we need to discuss afterwards, after this application.
Okay, I
Other
just-
agenda,
All right.
other.
I just want to make sure that you weren't waiting for nothing.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. And the woman that just walked in, are you here for the Eversource application?
Yes.
Good, because otherwise the other one went away, the first application. Okay. Any of the board members, well, let's, I think that before we go any further, should we settle the question Joanne had asked of Collis about the wetland scientist?
I have a comment on that before we do that.
On what?
On that requirement, it's not, under 13.3.3.7, it says environmental impact assessment, but it doesn't define by whom. Later on, for the other aspects, but in itself, it's, or, an environmental impact assessment. Unless I'm missing something, I don't find anywhere that it says by a certified
I
wetland
can answer
scientist.
that.
But I could be missing something.
What you're missing is, you're looking at the current regulations, I believe, but we have a zoning change that's been posted for that requirement, and that does state that it needs to be completed by a wetland
Yeah.
scientist. And I did send the applicant all of that information.
So I have a recommendation as to how to deal with that issue. Fully support apprentices coming up through the program. We need more young certified wetland scientists in this state. So, yeah, I'm glad to see that someone's stepping forward under your tutelage, I assume, Sarah. So I would suggest, if we could just change that to say, this assessment was prepared by Robert Tyler, New Hampshire wetland scientist, apprentice number due under my direct supervision, Sarah Burnham, who is a wetland scientist.
I am not a wetland
Oh, you're not?
scientist. I'm not. I'm a certified wildlife biologist,
Oh.
but I'm not a wetland scientist.
But didn't I read
Heavens.
in our packet that in order for a apprentice to even perform that study or that assessment, that a certified wetland scientist has to accompany that person
Well, it has to be
on
under
that?
direct supervision of one, but I think we could still put that
Yes.
same wording in here, and somebody from your
Yes.
company
Yeah,
can stamp it.
Whoever was supervising that day needs to have their name on the record.
Sure. I think that's,
And if, and I don't know why that couldn't be something we could handle
I
administratively,
agree.
if long as the board concurs.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it.
So that issue has been put to bed for now.
I do have one other comment. Do you want me to?
Go ahead,
continue,
Carlos.
or how do you want to handle this? I'm trying to find the page. Here it is somewhere. And Sarah, this will be deja vu all over again for Sarah. She heard this last night. It talks about, oh yeah, it's right on the front page of the report. At the end of the second paragraph, it says that they're temporary wetland impacts, and then at the very end of that sentence, it says they'll be restored to pre-construction conditions to the extent practicable. We talked about this at the Conservation Commission last night, and I think we should just stop it, that they will be restored to the pre-existing conditions. because the maximum extent practicable is subjective in nature, even though you can find a definition of practicable. That would be my recommendation. That was the recommendation made last night at the Conservation Commission. I think the applicant was okay with that. Is that fair to say, Sarah?
So we don't need to discuss it, you're going to agree to that,
Yes.
that terminology?
Thank you.
Do
All right,
do you
so-
want that as, when we get to it, do you want that as a condition of approval?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So make sure it's clearly written to add in as a condition of approval when we get to the end of the application. Any other board members have anything to discuss with staff or each other prior to opening it up to the applicant? We're all good. So I'd like you to welcome you folks to the board tonight. Please identify yourself for the record.
I'm Sarah Barnum. I'm with GSC.
Jeremy Fennell, licensing and permitting for Eversource.
Did you get both those names? So please begin.
So the project that's before you is as described by Joanne. I think a few important things to note about it are that all the impacts that are proposed to the wetlands are temporary. They're only a result of placing wetland matting within the wetlands to protect them from the machinery that has to drive through to get to the poles. All the poles are replacements. There's not any new poles, it's just existing poles that need to be replaced because they have structural issues. And the project is designed to maintain an existing service and to deliver power to the region. So nothing new being proposed, all just replacement. As we discussed already, the reason for the permit application is because the poles will, the access to the poles is going to encroach into the wetland district, and that requires a conditional use permit. All of the project as a replacement of an existing utility, it will conform to all the requirements of the CUP. It's not going to have any undue effect on neighborhood character or visual or traffic or any of those things. So it meets all the requirements. And I think that really is sort of the highlights of the project. And I guess if you have questions about it, we'd be happy to answer them.
Joanne, did we get the page that I emailed you about that was not signed and not dated and not anything in our packet? Did you receive that
Yes, we have it in our
administratively?
file. It came in separately after your packet, so that's why it wasn't included, but I checked with Patty and we have it in our file.
So I think we need a motion from Jim for, to accept the application such and such.
Yes, find it complete. Based on Joanne's statement that she's about to give us that it's complete.
It is complete
No regional impact.
and has no regional impact.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Jim, seconded by Kimberly, to find that motion is complete, ready to review, and there are no regional impacts. Any discussion on the motion?
I commend you on learning to prod your board members to do the routine stuff we forget.
Well, I'm usually the one that forgets, so I'm starting to remember. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed, abstentions, motion passes, so. Do you have anything else for us at this point? Do we have, these are conditional use permits, don't we have to go over the criteria and ask and
Yeah.
answer all the questions?
Yes.
So could you please, let's start with that part of the application first, and whoever's gonna, you can pose the question and we'll let the applicant answer.
So if you look on page 6 of your packet, just a little bit, almost a little bit higher than the middle of the page, it says conditional use permit. The criteria is listed, and then the answers are right after that for each one.
Does the applicant have the answers as we have them in our packet?
Yes.
So she can read them off?
Yes.
Okay. I don't want it to have a different reading of the applicants than what we have.
No.
So 15, start with 15.414.
He just wants you to read your answers.
So ask the question, Joanne. Let's just make sure she knows what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please ask.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is the use specifically authorized in the ordinance as a conditional use?
Yes, it is.
Usually you have to give an answer, not just a yes or no. Am I correct, Jim?
Well, they can ask that this be put into the record, so if it's in their application, I think we just have a summary, but,
Well, I thought we've always asked applicants
well,
to
usually, 'cause
verbalize it.
they don't come as well prepared as Eversource does, but we can do it that way, Tim. It's not wrong.
I just want to make sure we treat
I just don't
everybody
want to
the
have to
same.
read this whole thing.
All right, then we'll, for the record, that we'll put the questions and the answers for the conditional use permit into the record, but we'll still,
Why don't we just ask her to confirm that they're correct, and we just do it in a summary.
so the second question is, if completed as proposed by the applicant, the development in its proposed location will comply with all requirements of the section and with the specific conditions or standards established in this ordinance for the particular use.
Yeah, and if you go through each one of those conditions that are listed below, I mean, the essential answer to all those questions is that it's an existing condition. Everything's already there. We're simply replacing things, not quite in kind, because some of the wooden poles will replace with steel. But they're all going to be roughly the same height, they're going to have the same function, they're going to look the same. And so, because it's an existing condition, it's not going to change any of those criteria that are listed below it.
All right, so I'm going to waive the reading of the rest of the questions. All right. So what else do we have to discuss tonight, Joanne? Do we have to talk about the wetlands impacts? Or is that,
So you should review the wetlands function and values assessment. It was reviewed last night by Conservation, and they were fine with it.
I had a question on that, I mean, just for my edification. They use whoever did this, I think it's on page 4. It cites to a different standard than we usually have. And I don't know if that was a material variation. On the bottom of page 2, it uses pre-established functions and values rather than rankings or numerical values, and then they cite to the Highway Methodology Workbook Supplement. Is that acceptable source for us?
That's a standard
Is it?
reference.
So there's two versions that are pretty much very similar.
Yeah.
Both the cheap and simple.
So that's okay, that's
Yeah,
not a...
gladly accepted.
so Kimberly, you have something?
I'm sorry, I read the report and I didn't have any concerns.
She might have one other question, let me see what it was, but maybe it was similar. No, I think I was just highlighting.
All right, staff comments, Joanne, I'm going to let you read them off and handle them one at a time. Page
Staff
9.
comments?
Page 9 in our packet.
Okay. I was just wondering if it would be possible to provide
A timeline on when you plan to start the work, how long it will take, when you plan to complete it.
Yeah, so we're planning to start the work in early February, which is next week. And we're going to, it'll be intermittent, it won't be the entire period, but we'll probably finish restoration in May.
Okay.
But the plan was to get the majority of the work done before the growing season really kicks in.
Will you be notifying people that are surrounding the properties when you're in there? Because we usually get phone calls. Okay.
the Conservation Commission comments.
And they have a copy of them, so, and they've acknowledged that, Joanne, so I
Okay,
think
so I
we're
don't
good
need
with
that
that, unless
one.
anyone else from the board has something to add regarding conservation. Nope, okay. Next one?
Okay, the next one is engineering. Eric, did you want to talk about that?
Eric, you can come on up here and park it somewhere up here if you like. So then please identify yourself for the record as you normally do.
Eric Gustafson, Goffstown DPW Engineering Department. There's just a few minor questions, or comments, I should say. Basically, addressing driveway permits in the letter. The access roads appear to be being upgraded, and it sounded like there was a few that were being proposed. The main crossings are off of Addison and Shirley that were just recently reclaimed, so to protect the town's infrastructure, we just want to make sure a permit's on file so we can be in contact with the contractor, make sure stabilized construction entrance is in place. And at the end of the project, if these roads are permanently going to be used for equipment, they require a paved driveway apron to define an access point. So that'll be comment one. Along the same lines, any gates, typically Eversource, we see gates installed. Any gates would be outside of the right of way, just to make sure there's no plow damage or anything else, any encroachments. It was pretty outlined very well in the letter, but just making sure erosion control best management practices are all installed in the wetland areas, and any gravel roads are stabilized properly, typically greater than 5%. Make sure something's stable on the side, riprap or anything else like that that's needed. Also noted in the letter, monitoring reports are going to be completed by BSC Group. So just so we can keep an eye on the project as those inspections happen, just have those emailed over to Public Works.
Jim?
Well, and there's comments after each site visit by BSC, by
Yes.
whom?
Yeah, that was cited directly in their letter.
Okay.
After each visit. They'll just forward it to us, just so if we have any questions come up, we can just refer to the reports.
Are we establishing and maybe it's in the report, I missed it, a schedule of BSC monitoring or inspections? How often do they have to do that?
I believe they called out weekly in there.
Okay,
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
sorry. Read it, but it didn't all sink in.
And these four engineering comments are acknowledged by the applicant. These are things you have to do.
I have a couple questions, actually.
Please.
So for Addison and Shirley Hill Road, were you saying that you wanted a local DPW, you need to submit a permit application?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, and I believe where you guys have there's already kind of a roughly defined entrance there. We just do a driveway modification permit. Just that way we have the name of your contractor and proper tracking. And then at the end of the project, if the roads are going to be used, do a small paved apron just so it doesn't chew up the shoulder of our road.
Okay. And would you be the contact person for that? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And the second question was about the gates. Were you saying you want us to make sure they're in our right of way, or?
Yeah, just if you do install gates, making sure they're outside of the town right away, so depending on.
Town right away. Okay.
Yeah, so just making sure they're not too close to the road.
Makes sense.
Okay. So these engineering comments have been acknowledged by the applicant.
Could I make a?
Sure, go ahead.
Please do. Eric, was there a construction sequencing notes part of the plan, do you know, or maybe the applicant? The reason I'm asking because, let's see, sorry, foggy. Item 3 says erosion control B&P shall be implemented. And I agree, they need to be implemented, but equally as important is they need to be removed. Once the project's complete, the areas are stabilized. It irks me to drive around town and see silt fences 3 years old flapping in the breeze, hay bales that are overgrown with grass. So just want to make sure that that's part of it because it's an eyesore to the community.
I see nodding heads, so I assume you're acknowledging the request.
Are those from our projects or other projects?
All projects.
Oh, okay.
Everybody at some point in time forgets to take down a silt
Yeah.
fence.
That is true.
It's
Yeah.
not intentional, it's just,
Right.
it happens. And the fire department comment here is if blasting is required, you have to have a permit is required and there's a 10-day waiting period, so you understand that as well. Police sent no comments. All right. Do you have anything else to present to the board at this time?
Do not?
Does the board member have any other questions for the applicants?
No, I have a question for Joanne. Are all the conditions that we just heard from Eric, they're incorporated into your list?
I just added one, which was number 7, to remove the words "to the extent possible" from that paragraph, and then also to add under number 5, "shall be removed at the conclusion of this project."
All right, I'm going to let you stay where you are temporarily. This time, we're going to open a public hearing. If anybody from the public is here to speak in regards to this application. Are you here to speak? Okay, could you folks step back, go back to your seats?
Sorry about that.
No problem. Procedure. Give us our name and address for the record, sir.
Good evening. I'm Bill Roberts. I live at 23 Roberts Road. And the work that is the subject of the application is on the, part of it is on the right-of-way, transmission line right-of-way that crosses our property, which is map 2, lot 59. My comments relate to not so much to wetlands effects, although the area that I'm going to talk about is, according to the plans, within a wetlands buffer. But they relate to making sure that the work that's done, construction activity, is within the Eversource right-of-way. And I had Joanne circulate some photos I brought, and they proposed condition that both I and Eversource wanted to jointly suggest to the board's consideration. Immediately north of Addison Road, if you look at page 1, is one of the main entries to where they will do work north of Addison Road, between there and up to towards Yacom Hill. In the past, Eversource contractors have, for instance, when they were doing the last pole replacement, they went well beyond the extent of the 150-foot right-of-way to the west. You can see that how it veers off into the forested part, and it was used for construction vehicles, but primarily for storing these gigantic mats to be used to place over the wetlands, which my recollection is they might have been a couple stories high. And there's a more close-up on number 2 of that same area, which enables you to see where it is. These were Eversource contractors. When I contacted Eversource about this, within the last couple of years, they've been very cooperative and helpful with it. They had, first thing, they sent out a survey team, and if you go over to page 3, this is a little confusing because now it's looking south on number 3 towards Addison Road, which is between the first set of poles that you see and the second. And the survey people at Eversource staked out where the edge of the right-of-way was, because they, as I said, had gone way beyond it. And you can see in the foreground a wooden stake with a flag, and you can see one in the distance, and there were some more. But everything on this photo to the right of that is off the right-of-way, and it was pretty messy with debris from the timber matting and so forth. So they had one of their contractors clean it up in August of 2020 and also seed the area outside the marked extent of the right-of-way. And that seems to be working out okay. However, putting in the wooden stakes is not turned out to be adequate to keep activities within the right-of-way, understandably. And if you go over to the next page, and actually 4, 5, and 6, about 4 months after it was staked and seeded, well, it was now winter, and Eversource contractors that were doing vegetation management were all over the place, including, now it's to the left is west, of the marked edge of the right-of-way. And that's what the other ones show. I spoke with people from Eversource today, and we agreed that we'd like to suggest that they're willing to do what I suggested, which is having temporary construction fencing placed along the actual edge of the right-of-way so that there isn't another mistake of going outside the right-of-way. And I appreciate their agreement to that. But we thought procedurally, if the board would consider it, it might be easiest to, rather than amend the plans, to refer to this, to ask that you consider attaching a condition, which Eversource has agreed, I believe, to the language.
Say what you, yeah, we have.
Okay. The language of the condition on the last page of the packet is proposed as follows. Temporary construction fencing at least 4 feet high, which is kind of a standard available, will be erected along the surveyed western edge of the transmission line right-of-way immediately north of Addison Road to prevent construction activity, vehicles, and material from going outside of the right-of-way. Such fencing to be removed upon completion of construction and restoration. We would just hope that maybe the board could attach that condition as agreed upon by landowner and applicant. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but if not, thank you very much.
I have a question. I'm looking at the sheet 3 of 4, and it shows the proposed access off of Addison Road, and it looks like it loops right through that cleared area. So
Yeah, I was going to ask Mr. Raymond whether that dotted black line, which under the key says existing access, whether that does veer out. It kind of looks to me like it does, but this is a very small scale, so I couldn't really tell. But it shouldn't. And if we were going to have a meeting on site next week to with the Eversource project team to. The stakes are still there that show the edge of the right-of-way, so it should be clear where fencing would go if to be put in.
Collis, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, and there's a typical note that you'll find in construction sequencing, a list of construction sequencing. They'll talk about installing erosion control measures and then installing construction fencing outside of those so as to limit equipment movement, stockpiling material, and that sort of stuff. So it's inside the erosion control devices. So, yeah, he's right on. I mean, that should be there.
Dave?
A question for the Eversource representative, either when he gets back up, but I'm surprised that these very detailed plans don't show the easement right away.
Okay.
And maybe he can address that.
Well, now here, I'm going to be the fly in the ointment in this whole deal right now, because we are here to discuss the outer 50-foot of the wetlands application. This sounds to me more like a civil matter between landowners and Eversource, and I don't know if we're within our authority to create a condition that is not relevant to the application.
Well, the problem, and the answer to that is they're showing a plan that we would approve that appears to have their going access over private property they don't own, and we don't have the authority to grant that.
Which page are you on for
I'm
that?
looking at page 4 of 4, 3 or 4 rather. So I think that is relevant to us. And then to Collis's point about making sure the everything is contained on the within the right-of-way, I think that is within our jurisdiction.
Are you saying that they represent that dotted line as the path that the vehicles are going to use to
That's what it's
access
labeled
the
as.
site?
Yeah, existing and proposed access, if you look at the color scheme down
The
below.
dotted is existing and the yellow is proposed.
But they look like they're, on top of each other. So I think we should take note of it.
Okay.
May I respond to that?
Anybody else, any board members have comment before we move to the applicant? Please, Jeremy.
Thanks. Yeah, so this particular area, there is an existing access road that's on our easement. We do recognize that in the past, because of our timber mat stockpile, we did go outside the easement. And it does seem that this is within the buffer, the water conservation buffer. And the proposed condition, we are okay with this. As far as marking out the construction limits. Typically, we do have our right-of-way easements on our construction mapping. It coincides with the cleared right-of-way. So in this case, it was just an oversight.
Right. Board
And
members?
I think, I think having the site meeting with Mr. Roberts next week, we'll all be on the same page, clear.
Mr. Roberts, had you completed your statements, or do you need to come back up for anything else?
I don't have any
I didn't want to cut you
unless
off.
have questions.
Okay. We don't, in public comment, we don't answer questions from the public. We take public comment and we put it into our decision-making. Anybody else in the audience here to speak on public comment? Okay. So at this time, I will close the public hearing.
Can I just notice something? Do you mind if I make an additional comment
Yeah.
now that we close the public hearing? So you drew my attention to the legend. And the legend says potential vernal pool extent. I'm not sure what that means. It either is a vernal pool or it isn't. I don't know what it means by potential vernal pool. Vernal pools are a valuable resource and they should be identified in the field. I'm not sure what the word potential means or why it's there.
Like on page 3.
Yeah, I'm looking at all of them. but it's in the
Potential
legend.
element.
Yeah, I'm looking at specifically on page 3. Right.
Do they have a delineation date listed? It's probably delineated outside.
I'm looking,
of
it's hard, the font's so small, I can't see some of it.
So are we talking about sheet 7?
Well, right now, I'm just looking at sheet 3 or 4 that has the legend,
Oh, the legend, okay.
and you'll see the far right-hand, the far right-hand column, right at the top is the blue hash, and it's identified as a potential vernal pool extent. So I'm not sure what, it's the word potential that bothers me.
Well, maybe none of them are identified because I can't find them on any of the
Yeah, I don't
sheets.
see them
Yeah,
either.
I haven't bothered to strain my eyes looking at that, I just haven't noticed it in the legend.
Right.
This seems to be a standard
Right.
legend that they would
Yeah.
put on all their construction drawings. The issue is that legend on any of the construction drawings?
I guess my issue is, are there any vernal pools within the work area?
Yeah, on page 7, there is
On page 7?
showing potential vernal pool area. I presume also that this was delineated out of the identification season, but BSC did not conduct this delineation. This was done by a different company, so.
So I'm looking at sheet 7, it's map sheet 7, it's between structures 109 and 108. There's one potential vernal pool identified, and that might have been something that was identified by NHB, but regardless, we're avoiding that wetland, so it should be a non-issue.
I would like to say for the record, since there are questions about the wetlands portion of this application, I would suggest that in future applications you would bring a wetland scientist with you to answer questions, because if questions went unresolved this evening, that means your application gets delayed.
For the record, I'm a New Hampshire certified wetland scientist.
Well, now,
I don't know.
the jack in the box pops out.
I wasn't going to lead with that.
Okay, so you do have a wetland scientist.
Yes.
But did you write the report?
No.
No. See, now there's a little
I approve the report.
little line in the sand.
Everything on that you're reading, I approve. So
Okay.
it's ultimately my responsibility.
Okay. All right. Anything else from the board? So we're going to include the DPW comments 1 through 4 as conditions of approval? Is that what the board wants?
Yeah, I think they're already in the,
I don't,
Yes, they are.
oh, they are.
and I would,
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't.
I would move that we include this additional one that Mr. Roberts just submitted. I recognize Tim's concerns, but I think because of the way the plan is noted, we need to make clear that they can't encroach, whether or not the access road is shown on the plan is within or without the right-of-way.
So there should be 8 conditions overall.
I don't want to vote against the application because I disagree with this condition, so.
You and I disagree on a lot of things, Tim.
So we should either vote on this condition as a list, or we should vote on an application, which
That's fine.
I will vote against.
No, if you want to have a
I have a
separate-
motion to add Mr. Roberts.
I'll make a motion. It's really a motion to amend, if you get ready for town and school meeting season, the proposal which I'm doing as moderator, to add Mr. Roberts, I call it the agreed to additional condition on marking the boundary of the right-of-way.
So to be clear, that construction fencing should be placed at the limits of extent of the work, which may not go all the way to the right-of-way, because what we want to do is keep the equipment in a confined area. And if they put it at, purpose of that, it's bright fluorescent orange, if anybody's ever seen it. So the operator on the excavator is out there, he's wailing around, he sees it, and he knows he's not supposed to go beyond there. So my point is, if you put it out at the edge of the easement, or the right-of-way, whichever the case may be, there may be plenty of area in between there and the work area that there's no need to disturb it, if you're following me. You know what I'm saying?
But you can't line the entire easement with construction fencing.
No, only the area that works.
I think that's a point worth making.
Yes. Right.
All right, so there's a motion to add the additional public comment request by Mr. Roberts as a condition of approval. Any discussion on the motion?
I'll second.
I got that already.
I'll second.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'm opposed. Abstentions? Seeing none, motion passes. Okay, so that condition is added as number 7, Joanne?
Number 8.
Number 8, what was number 7?
Number 7 was to remove the wording to the extent possible.
I thought that was number 6.
No, number 6 is environmental compliance monitoring, and then there needs to,
So the wording you're talking about, Joanne, is the wording mentioned by the Conservation Commission in their report that they gave us? Is that the
Yes.
wording we're talking about?
Yeah,
Yes.
yes.
so there's, so to answer Gail's question, number 6 is as was printed on this report, environmental compliance monitoring reports from BSC shall be sent to DPW after each weekly visit.
The additional Collis had was, I think it was on number 5 about the removal.
Yes, I have that too.
Yeah, that's included.
So you're adding to number 5, removal once the project is completed?
Yes.
I'll move that the,
Have we, wait, before we make a motion for anything, have we covered all the steps before? I didn't forget any steps here in this process?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Jim?
I'll move that we approve the recommended, on the article, the recommendations as previously amended. I hope you all come to the school meeting so I can show off my moderator skills.
Is So there's been a motion to approve the application as presented by Jim. Anybody want to second that?
I'll second it.
Phil?
Yep.
Any discussion of the motion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions, motion passes, the application is approved. With minor changes.
Short one backward, so I can get the one that Mr. Roberts handed out. I gave
Here, you want this one?
Right there.
Is this what you
So
want?
I just need the conditions for this.
Okay. You have this?
I have, this is okay. He doesn't need it.
I think we should acknowledge they do a good job.
Yep, your electric rates pay for it.
Well, it's okay. It wastes less of our time. That's okay.
Folks, we have more meeting to conduct, so if you could take it out in the hallway, please. Thank you. All right, Joanne, we have other business. We're not going to have to dig into the fire cistern standards this evening, but
Mark them up.
we can have markup comments, but we're not going to finalize anything tonight because we still have till when, Joanne?
February 24th is when the fire chief will be in to present this to you, and at that time you could ask him questions, but I wanted you to have enough time to review it. And
Do you want any questions now?
I think we should just have a very brief discussion.
I think that's a
I
good
have
idea.
one or two things I pointed out that I'd like to bring in, so I'll let you start, Jim.
My question is, who has authority to do these things? Like determine cistern placement or requirements? What's the statutory authority of the fire department to do that compared to ours? Because this authorizes the fire department to do a lot of actions that I don't think they have the authority to do as to our site plans. I think their role is a recommendation, just like we get recommendations from Conservation Commission, police, and engineering. We have the authority and the power to disregard them. And the reason why we should is they're conflicting. And I'll give you an example from the good old days when the fire department wanted roads that were a mile wide. So we have the ugly roads, and then, as Don Hamburg pointed out, traffic studies show they're actually more dangerous than narrow roads, as well as using a pavement. So that's an example where we start to say no, and we've done that on other situations. So I don't want to give away our authority, particularly when there's no statutory authority that I can find, but the fire department makes these decisions.
Well, the question would be, Jim, where is the authority granted for fire cistern standards to be put into place in the town of Goffstown? Is it a Board of Selectmen decision?
We approve site plans.
Yes, but if there's a standard that's approved by the Board of Selectmen, are we obligated to put that standard into practice?
We approve site plans. I'd say no.
Okay, that's the big question.
Board of Selectmen have no authority over our decisions on site plans.
Okay.
Just
Anybody?
like we don't have authority over them, much as sometimes we'd like to.
Anything else, Jim?
No.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Can I ask a question? Maybe Jim might know the answer. So the NFPA fire code, which is what our department is using for their standards,
is there some sort of authority under that?
I don't know. If there is, I'd like to know it.
Okay.
But this looks like it's a site plan issue or a subdivision issue and not. But if there is some authority, what is it?
We need to determine the authority for this
Correct.
document.
Yeah, there may be, I just not aware of it.
It may be related to an RSA, which refers to the.
Well, we have to find out.
I didn't see it, but I don't.
Well, the two things that I marked up were page 2, cistern specifications, letter C, the last set at the bottom. Cisterns shall be trouble-free and carry a lifetime warranty of 50 years. Nothing is warranted for 50 years. And who is going to be the holder of the warranty? Because once the town accepts the cistern as part of the subdivision, that cistern becomes the town's property at that point. So that's one question I have that has to be,
Well, while you're there, trouble-free, what does that mean?
yeah, I mean, I underlined the whole thing. And the second thing I underlined was on page 4, at the very bottom, it says alternative option. The fire chief or designee may waive in whole or part fire system requirements to the extent that structures have sprinkler systems. I was under the false impression all the years that I've served on this board that it was an option to the developer to do one or the other. So the word may needs to, I would recommend, is removed. So this will waive in whole. I'm just saying that we're leaving the decision up to the fire department to decide if it's a cistern or sprinklers. And the case was,
I'm not willing to cede any authority to the fire department.
right. But I'm just, I put whose decision as not a guaranteed option.
You probably already know this, but if a developer wants to put in a project, say subdivision, and the fire department cannot ask for the sprinklers by state statute. However, if they offer, then the fire department, according to this, they're saying the fire department may not require a cistern in lieu of these sprinklers being installed, but they cannot require or even, they're not even supposed to be asking for them. The developer's supposed to be making the offer. So that's how it technically is supposed to work. But my issue when this whole thing started about the cisterns was there wasn't any conversation happening between the two parties. And the fire department came in with their comments saying they needed, after so many lots, they needed to put in a cistern. And the developer may have offered sprinklers after some discussion, but the message came as they will put in a cistern. So there, to me, there needs to be more communication. I know you can't write that in here, but I think that's what.
And the word may is very subjective, because if someone had a bad relationship with the fire department for any number of reasons, then there's the option that they could be told you're putting a cistern in instead of doing something that's less expensive.
Well, true, but you don't want to have it on, you can't say if they offer a sprinkler, you have to give them that option, what if there's not enough water pressure, what if there's some other, so.
No,
It's
sprinklers
not a clear binary system.
Sprinklers have never been designed to put the fire out, and that needs to be recognized.
I know, but there are times when one is more appropriate than the other, and somebody has to exercise that judgment. And I'm not willing to say they can offer something.
They actually have two different functions, Jim. Sprinklers are designed for humans to escape the building,
I understand.
whereas a cistern is designed to put the fire out after the people have taken their chances to get out of the building.
So maybe you want both, I don't know.
I don't know.
So, yeah, that's why I don't want one or the other, I think you have to leave some. But I think this needs to be looked at. I have some other comments, but I don't know if you want to get into the weeds. We can wait.
I had a question for the board just to think about. This page 1 reads, the subdivision that results in 3 or more new building lots would be required to have a cistern. And I looked to see what other towns require, and some required 3 or more. Derry required 12 units, so it's all based on units, not necessarily number of new lots. They were all over the place, and so I'm just wondering if the board had any knowledge about what they would like to see.
I have a question on how that sentence is constructed. Are those supposed to be all of them, or it should be an or? Doesn't say.
When?
Oh, A, B, C, D. Is it one, if any one of those is present, if all of those conditions are
Yeah,
present?
it doesn't say.
No.
My problem, my reason for bringing that up is because I need something more specific than what we have now. Because when we sit down with the developer and they're trying to figure out how many lots they're going to do, they have to determine what the costs will be. And they have to take that into consideration based on, all of the costs combined. And right now, we don't have anything solid to say, okay, if you do 3 lots, you need a cistern. Okay, that's, X number of dollars. So the way the wording is now is very difficult to give the developer any sort of
Guidance.
guidance and even an estimate of some sort. A cistern costs approximately $80,000, and that's installed. So it's quite an expense, and I just think there needs to be some sort of agreement on, okay, how many lots or how many units can someone install by the time they actually need to install one or two or three, or, depending on the subdivision. So that's where I'm coming from with this.
Okay. Eric, are you good?
I'm good for that, yeah.
Jim, did you want to just touch briefly on your other two?
Well, these aren't major, but if you look at the bottom of page 4, testing, under testing H, the contractor, development, and/or owner. My theory is if you use and/or, you're not thinking clearly. Which is it? Is it and or is it or? And how do we hold a contractor or developer forever responsible when they sell the lots? And at that point, who is the responsible party?
Owner.
I would say the
Their hope is gone.
owner at the time.
Yeah, but they're gone.
Whoever owns the land at the time of the transfer of
That will make,
providing it to the town.
and whoever owns the land at the time we make the claim, or whoever owned the land?
No, once it's ready to be accepted by the town,
It becomes town property.
right.
right, so whoever owns, whoever owned the project, no, I
Yeah,
shouldn't say
Empty
land, the
Bag
project
LLC,
itself.
it's now gone because they sold all their assets.
Yeah, that's
a
true.
meaningless remedy.
And I see this just like accepting a road. Up until the point that it's accepted by the town, it's not the town, it's the developer or the landowner who owns the land.
Nobody's ever gonna buy a lot subject to a cistern then.
Well, I think it might be worthwhile if any one of us had a comment about the cistern regulations, forwarded the comment to Joanne. She can then forward it to the fire department prior to the presentation.
Yep.
Okay.
That's what I'm gonna do.
Yep.
So if anybody has questions about, or comments about them, just send a note off to Joanne. I'm gonna do the same thing, and that way Joanne can send them to fire, because you're in the middle of a transitional fire chief situation at this time too, so who knows if it's gonna even get delayed? I don't know what's gonna
Right.
happen.
And then in the future, we can focus our conversation. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That's good approach.
Anything else? Board members?
Motion to adjourn?
Oh, we had one thing, and then
Oh, Eric had something over and above it.
Then I need to take your photo before you leave.
Just one small thing, Joanne and I have been working on updating development regulations. As part of that, we were talking with CLD the other day, and one of the points that CLD brought up was having standalone typical details in the development regulation. So currently, there's, if, at the backside of the detail sheets of the project, we usually just work with the engineer who's doing the design, make sure it conforms to our regulations. They're suggesting having a standalone document with all our typical road cross sections, curb details and such.
Yeah, like it.
All
Yeah.
trainer standards, so we're just trying to see if the board was good with moving forward with that.
So they
Yep.
would pull out some of what's in the current document, put it in a separate document, and then join it with everything that Eric has from his
And have
department.
that as an attachment or a schedule to our regs, but in one place.
Yeah, the regulations would reference this document, but I think the way I understood it, I gotta look into it a little more, is it would be a standalone document, so if the industry changed, pipe type change, we need more stone, something like that, we could make small adjustments to the details.
It wouldn't need to come back to the board, it would be more of
I
a
question that,
engineering.
But okay, I agree with putting in a separate schedule. I don't agree that we can delegate for the same reason I just said to somebody else to make our regs. It is still part of our regs.
And that way, we have some comfort that the detail that goes on the plan complies with our regulations, our ordinances. And
They can-
if they don't, they want to do something different, they can always request a waiver.
They could cut and paste our ordinance then
Right.
onto their plan.
I think, and I could be wrong, because I've been wrong before, but we had this same type of document in Hooksett, and it was never part of the development regs. It was referred to, in other words, if you're building a road, blah, 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 look at this book for the details. So it wasn't something that was waivable at all, and it wasn't waivable by planning, it wasn't waivable by anyone. This is the details they had to abide by. It was more of an engineering document than anything else. It wasn't something that, you know, talks about things that planning boards would even get involved in. And Derek, I always call you Derek. Eric has those requirements now, it's just that they're not in a place where they're available to the public.
We concur, let's put them in with the
I
development.
don't concur with your legal conclusion, I concur with putting them in a separate document.
But still have planning board
Well,
control.
they have to be part of our regs in order for us to enforce them.
We can incorporate them into that.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's fine, that was the input I was looking for exactly, so thank you.
Got the answer you wanted?
I got the answer I wanted.
They're good to go.
Please.
can you guys just gather for a photo?
Not until we adjourn the
Now, what
meeting.
you ugly with that
Motion
that
to
I've written
adjourn.
down. Since it said a meeting.
We have a motion to adjourn by Phil,
I'll second.
seconded by Kimberly. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you, GTV.